Welcome everybody to this. This is Michael from the Marx Group Live. Excited to be here today teaching Admin Class 219, Zoho SalesIQ to you, live and in person. Today I'm hoping to cover, sorry for that moment of noise, today I'm hoping to cover the following. We're going to be looking at what exactly SalesIQ does and what it might do for your organization. We're going to take a look at the SalesIQ backend. We're going to work on configuring the SalesIQ widget, and we're going to see who's online with us. We're going to use the SalesIQ application to get some idea of what's happening in terms of our website visitors. Today we'll spend about 45 to 60 minutes going over the classwork, and I'm guessing I'm going to be on the high side of that. And I'm going to open up the last 45 to 60 minutes for a class discussion where I can answer any of the questions provided by you in the chat window over on the right-hand side of your screen, which I think you're going to see roughly somewhere around that way. We can also use the last hour to expand on any of the topics that I covered today in more detail if you like. If you're on a mobile device, there should be a chat window available there as well, where I ask you to please place all of your questions during our class today. By the way, that chat window will close after the class time is over, but I encourage you to continue asking questions for clarity on our main webpage, where you'll see a chat option on every page. Just mention that you're asking a question regarding a class topic, and one of our trainers will be happy to help. Now, interestingly enough, this is exactly the function that we're going to be working with today, the chat function. So it sort of makes sense that you may be using the chat function to ask questions about the chat function. If you're having any resolution or speed issues, down to the lower right corner of your screen, you've got two buttons there. There's that button which makes your video full screen, which gives you the full and wonderful experience all over your screen, and makes you wish that you had a really big screen, I'm sure. And then, of course, we've got the cog or the gear icon that you can use to select a size and quality for the video that we're looking at. If your internet speed is not what it should be, you might want to set that to a lower number, but usually we suggest leaving that to auto. Feel free to download and follow along with our class documentation. It's not a manual, but it is a nice way to follow along as well as being a reference after the class. You may be able to scroll down the screen just a bit to see the download link, unless we haven't prepared the documentation yet, in which case, again, send us an email or leave us a chat message, and we'll get to that as soon as we can. As I go through things, remember to ask any questions that you may have into the chat window for the Vimeo chat window. Now, if you've seen some of our previous Marx Group Live training sessions, you'll be familiar with how our screens are usually laid out. And with apologies, I'm going to change that up a bit for this lesson. Let me just go to that screen right now. I'm going to change it up a little bit for this lesson because I'm going to be showing you some advanced features present in the Zoho SalesIQ system. And to illustrate what we're doing, I'm going to wind up using 3 different browser windows across 2 different web browsers. So I've altered the usual geometry here for maximum visibility. I can't make any promises since this is my first time teaching this class, but with luck that should help move things along a little bit more smoothly. It is a juggling act today in this class. This is an administrator class. That means you need to have administrative privileges on your Zoho installation. Otherwise, you won't be able to take part in our examples, but you're certainly more than welcome to watch and get a better sense of this very powerful Zoho function. This is also a CRM Plus and a Zoho One tool. It is not part of the base Zoho CRM installation. It is very cost effective for what it does, so if you don't have it, you might consider following along with this class to get a better sense for whether or not it might be a worthwhile thing for you to look at in your own business context. So today's big takeaways, we've covered that. We're going to be using several sales IQs that we have, one of which is used in our training system, and the other of which is actually our real live training database. So I'm going to have to be a little bit careful about what I show you on the live system. So let's switch over to our dual screens right now. All right. So what is SalesIQ? SalesIQ is a way to track your website visitors. It's similar to the real-time views in Google Analytics, and it's also a way to chat with whomever is visiting your site at this time. Over here on the right, you can see our Marx Group Live. There we go. Here's our regular marxgrouplive.com website, and down in the lower right-hand corner, stuck at the bottom, is a live chat option. Right here it says live chat. Questions on classes or subscriptions? There's an icon there. My cursor becomes a hand, so I can click on this. This is a clickable object. And what you'll notice is that as I scroll through the page, that button stays where it is. It floats over the content that's below it. Now when I click on this, I can enter information into it like any chat system. And there we go. All right. This is actually from a previous conversation that I had with that I had. Let me switch to that right now. So let me go here to here, and I'm going to switch off one of these windows. Let me make sure I get the right one. I'm going to move this one down in this queue, and I'm going to go to, let's see, I'm going to close that for the time being. All right, and I'm going to move that. That's my visitor screen, so I'm going to move that down. Okay, great. So now, what we're going to see is I'm going to actually demonstrate this system in use. Let's see. So here is the real backend that is off on the left side of the screen. Here is the actual backend that we're running. And off here on the right-hand side of the screen is the visitor side of the chat system. So actually, let me stay in the screen off on the left for a moment. This is actually Mr. Corey Babka's account that you can see I've logged on here as him temporarily. This shows this is us within Zoho. This is part of the SalesIQ, and this is the first window. It's the first tab. It says SalesIQ up in the top left-hand corner. Visitors online. And this is a screen that shows when somebody first gets onto our system, they're way off on the side, and as they spend longer and longer times on the site, they come in closer and closer until that's a visitor. That's the one visitor that's on the site at this time. I will get back to understanding all of the things that are happening on this analytics screen in a few moments, but I want to show you what it looks like when I post a question in the chat window. So here I am. There's Michael. I have to type in my email address. Zoho won't let me start this conversation without this information. So I'm going to type a quick message. Hello, Zoho SalesIQ operator. And then I click on Start Chat down here. You might notice that the Marx Group logo is up there. And I'm going to start the chat. Do you see what happened? Off on the left side of my screen here, on the left side of my screen, this is the back end of the Zoho Sales Group, the SalesIQ that's running on the real live Zoho system that marxgrouplive.com is using. I actually have an alert in the background. That's because I have two tabs open. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to answer this call. There we go. So here is the back end on the left side, and the visitor side on the right side of your screen here. And I hope you get a sense now of what I'm talking about in terms of juggling windows. I need about another 3 or 4 screens on my desktop. Okay, so here we have a default message that pops up. So the SalesIQ operator gets a window that says, hey, somebody has just asked a question. And so here is an automated message. And here's what I sent to Corey. So in this example, I'm acting as Corey. And that's the default message that has gone out from here. And here the visitor sees it on the window, in the chat window. So I'm going to say, hello, Marx Group Live visitor. Thank you for your chat request. Now when I type enter here, you see that on the right side of my screen, there's the message. I can go here and I can reply, hello MGL operator. I have some questions about the Zoho SalesIQ IQ product. It looks very powerful, and indeed it is. So here is the conversation that we're having. All right, down toward the bottom here, there are canned messages that I can insert. If I click on that, maybe these are commonly used messages that I may wind up, so any text that I use frequently in the context of my chat, I can customize that. So when we're setting up SalesIQ, or any time after that, within the setup section of SalesIQ, I can create some new standard text blocks. I also have more, actually the search bar here is useful. If you have more than a handful of these standard text blocks, I can search for a specific word, for example, CRM, and now that way I can narrow down the number of choices that I have to pick from if I have a large number of them there. There are also more actions. I can block this IP address. If this is somebody who is scamming or spamming or a troll, I can block that specific IP address for all the good that it does. Eventually, it's likely that the trolls will either persist and find another way in through another IP address, excuse me, or maybe they'll go away. I can share URLs. I can choose to share a link to another web page. I can invite another operator in to either take over the chat or join with me on the chat, or I can transfer this chat to another operator. Up here on the right, this is some interesting information. Up here on the right of my screen during this chat, I can see that is where this chat is coming from. Later on, we'll look at the code that is used to generate chat messages, and because it is on the web, this code could be vulnerable. This code could hypothetically be installed where someplace that you don't expect it to, or maybe you've installed it in a place you didn't expect. So this is actually a very useful function to have. This tells me what page, what website the chat message is coming from. This is the email address that I wrote in when I set up the chat. Michael over here on the left, Michael is the name that I entered when I initiated the chat as a client. This tells me, off here you've got 3 icons. It tells me that I'm coming from the United States, that I'm currently using the Mozilla Firefox web browser, and I'm on a Microsoft Windows platform. For those of you who have a background in web analytics, you'll realize that this is all standard stuff that can be transmitted in a web browser pull request. I can push this conversation to our CRM, which is interesting. This will create a lead with the name with this information here, and then this way the conversation becomes part of our conventional CRM operations. And I can convert this chat into a ticket, which is pretty handy because that way, if there's a recurring issue, or if we're using the Zoho desk ticketing system, I'm able to enter this chat as the initiation of a ticket. All right, I'm going to switch back to the chat window for a moment here. So we're going to look on the right side of your screen here. I have additional options here as well. As a visitor, I have some more options. I can attach a file to this chat. So let's say I've taken a screenshot of something that I want to ask about, or there's an output, there's a printout, not a printout, but a PDF or another file. And I want to say, well, how can I put this into my CRM? For any reason, I can attach a file to the chat. I can mute the chat, the microphone, or I can enable the microphone. I can send an email, and I can print the contents of this chat. All right. Depending upon depending on how your browser is set up, microphone functions and the call functions may or may not involve having to open up ports in your firewall. If you happen to be using an industrial strength firewall and you need to know which ports to use for this, let me know via the chat window or let me know via an email, and I'll see what I can find out. At the end of the chat, down at the bottom right, there's an on-off switch. When I hover over it, I can see that the pop-up or the hint says end chat. So I can click that. That is some default text that popped up there. I can share my rating and my feedback. So if I click on one of these stars, I can click on that star. That's a response that popped up there for a moment that said, wow, great, thank you, because I showed 5 stars. If I make it a 4-star, thank you for your rating, 3 stars, and 2 stars, and 1 star. And so all these messages that pop up or that get dropped down from the top here, whenever I show a rating, this is something that we're going to look at configuring in today's session. And I'll write here, thanks for your help, with an exclamation, and I will submit this. Or of course I can cancel if I want to continue with the chat. There we go. And then I get a message here that the chat has ended. On my Zoho, on the back end, it says here that the visitor has ended the chat session. I can add a note, I can close this window, or I can block the IP. So we have a fair amount of power in terms of how we handle the chat that just occurred. So I can add a note to this chat. For example, visitor was interested in seeing how the chat functions work. Everything worked very well, and we should find out how to set this up. I can save that, and now my chat message, there's the message from the visitor. Here's the note that we added to it. All right. Looking back on the right side for a moment, I can email the transcript, or I can recommence the chat if I wish, or I can email the transcript to myself. All right. It is possible to get desktop notifications of when things happen. We may wind up getting a colored bar in our backend saying, hey, something has just happened on the SalesIQ. Do you want to enable desktop notifications? But now that we, right now you're not going to see them because I've been working in SalesIQ for a little while now, and I don't think it's going to show me those messages anytime in the immediate future because I've already gone through the, I've already put the alerts away. So now that we've seen, at least in part, what SalesIQ can do, I think it's time to show you how to set it all up so that it can start doing what it does. I'm going to switch over to the SalesIQ page on our demo site. Let me bring that up. There it is. All right. There are different, the SalesIQ setup and the SalesIQ, what it looks like. It may look different depending upon which version of Zoho you're in. So if you're using Zoho 1 or Zoho CRM, you may have a slightly different user, not the user interface of the Zoho SalesIQ, but things may be in slightly different positions, particularly early on in the setup process. Now, if you are using Zoho 1 or Zoho CRM already, SalesIQ knows who you are and puts you in. Up here at the top, I can set my availability. Let me go to the correct window here. There it is. Up at the top, I can set my availability to be available or not available. There I am as the TMG Live Admin. And here are the functions that I have within SalesIQ. I can see who's online. I can look at my visitor history. I can look at missed messages. I can look at the chat history. I can look at feedback that visitors have left. I can generate reports. I can configure my profile, and then there are settings. And that's where we're going to spend a lot of time today. Now, one of the interesting things, if you look at visitors online, if you have enough screens and your computer can handle the load, you may actually simply want, depending on how busy your website is or how important it is for you to see everybody who's on, you could watch this as a live dashboard. This is, by the way, our sales, this is our training system, so there's nobody currently visiting. But otherwise, you could leave this up as a real-time training, as a real-time support tool. Right now, if we switch to our production system, the real live one, right now there's one visitor online. We'll look at what we can find out about that visitor later on in this class. Let me go back to here. All right. So this is where we have, let's see, oh, I'm in the wrong screen. There we go. Okay, so the settings is a big part of what we're doing today. When I click on settings, I wind up with a row of tabs up at the top. These are all different parts of the settings. And it starts with operators, then there's the Zobot, company, departments, portal settings, blocked IPs, websites, automation, templates, and lead scoring, as well as integrations. We're going to walk through all of these today. I may have to switch between the our demo site and our live site, so bear with me while I juggle here. So first we have operators. I can create a new operator by clicking on the Add Operator button in the top right corner. Zoho opens up a new tab and thinks for a few moments, and it invites me to add a new user to the SalesIQ function. I'm going to cancel that for the time being and go back to my tab here. Moving one tab over to the right, we have the Zobot. When you have a relatively predictable array of questions and answers, this kind of tool actually does make sense. So we can add a bot. For us at the Marx group, we have too many different kinds of questions and too many nuanced answers to offer for this to become a useful tool. If your business context suggests that, yeah, you get a fairly high number of standard questions, yeah, you might find that this is something that you'd like to explore with us. Another tab off to the right, we have company information. This is about who you are, and you can see how we've set this up in our demo environment. Wait, yes, this is our demo environment. In our demo environment, we haven't set up very much of this, but you'll find that in a production system, the more data you put into this, the more value you'll get out of your CRM. Down here is the business hours. We will come back to the business hours in just a few moments. Down here, actually, let's get into it right now. Down here, we can define the business hours for our company. This means that this is when the chat system, the chat widget, is available. So in our demo environment, it's available from 9 in the morning until 5 in the evening, or 1700 hours, from Monday through Thursday, and then it's available from 9 until 1 p.m. on Friday. So this is when the chat window will say, yes, I'm available. Let me see if I can pull something up. There we go. Let me show you roughly what this is going to look like. PowerPoint, there we go. All right. So during office hours, we'll have the message that says, oh, come back. During office hours, or during our business hours, this is what users will see down in the bottom right corner of our website, the live chat. And then off business hours, automatically, this button will change and it will give us this text. So Zoho knows what our business, when we tell Zoho what our business hours are, it'll automatically flip between the online and the not online versions of the widget. All right, so let me put that away. One tab farther over from company, we have departments. Now, I'm going to switch from our demo system to our real live system here for a moment. Let me go into my settings. There we go. We have, by the way, the SalesIQ, the user interface does look slightly different. Oh, that didn't switch over. Let me get that switched over right now. Let me go to hide that one. Oh, yeah. What have I hidden? Oh, there we go. Sorry. There we go. So this is our live system. This is what it looks like in our, there we go. Here are the departments in the live Marx Group .com system. We have Marx Group General, and we have Marx Group Live Training. Each one of these represents its own widget. The General belongs to Gene Marx, that's the Marx in Marx Group, and the other department is one that I'm a member of, the Live Training group. Each one of these has its own widget, and I can configure each one of these separately. Here we can define staff members of our group who have access to the SalesIQ functions and who can handle the conversation systems. Right now, we have 3 operators. We have Corey, we have Megan, and we have Suzanne. We can change just about any aspect of the widget, from the color to the scripts that it runs. And we should think of each department as if it were running a different website. For example, we have marxgroup.net and marxgrouplive.com, and each one of these sites has its own widget with its own configuration. The only thing that is shared between multiple widgets is the business hours during which the business is active. So that's on the company page, down here, the business hours, that is common to all departments. So if I can grab one of these. Let me go to the Marx Group Live Training Group. I'm going to scroll down. I can grab one of these and I can change. I can grab either the top or the bottom. Let's see, set that there. I can actually pull the entire block. Let's say that I want to leave it as a, let's see, that's a 9-hour day. I can take that 9-hour day and I can move it, offset it up or down by half-hour increments. I can grab an end of it and make it larger or smaller on either side, and then save my changes. All right. Now this will, if I change the timing here, I'm going to cancel that for now. If I were to change that timing there, it would change the availability for both the Marx Group General widget as well as the Marx Group Live Training widget. All right. Let's move over one tab to the right and look at portal settings. This is where we really start to see the fun of configuring the chat system. The first option there, this lets the visitors see when we're doing the typing. So if I'm typing something, if this is enabled and I'm typing, then the visitor is going to see that off in their window over here. The visitor doesn't see what I'm typing, just the fact that I'm typing something. The 3 dots indicate that I'm doing something and I haven't left my desk for a cup of coffee to binge watch the entire Star Wars saga. Curious though, and maybe a little bit creepy, the manager or the operator on the back end of Zoho is able to see everything that is written in the visitor text entry area, even if the person hasn't hit enter or send. Everything that is written in that area winds up being visible in real time. Possibly creepy. I leave it to you whether that's something that you want to pay attention to. Let me go back through here. I can choose whether or not I am able to send files to the visitor. I can either enable or disable URL sharing with visitors. I can make it possible for the CRM operator to respond to the visitor via email system. Google Translation is an option. Screen sharing is an option. That's incredibly powerful depending upon the kind of work that you're doing. Should we allow visitors to generate a transcript or to download or email themselves a version of the transcript? Yes. Or we can set that it's automatically mailed. A bit farther down, we can configure what it looks like when operators are offline or online. In our organization, we prefer that the appearance to show that we're always available, so we don't set idle operators to show up as offline. The operator idle time just says if Zoho hasn't received some sort of input, or the SalesIQ app hasn't received some input from the operator, after 30 minutes, the operator is regarded as being offline, idle. Then the concurrent chat limit gives you some insight into the capabilities of your chat operators. We can set that to some remarkably improbable values. Although maybe you've been on a chat, on a help desk chat system where maybe it feels like the operator is handling 10 or 25 or more simultaneous chats. All right. Farther down, we have still more parameters that you will either discover to be incredibly important to your organization, or those are parameters where you'll just take the defaults because you don't know any good reasons not to. Your context will determine how important these parameters are. Um, over to the right, oh, portal settings, sorry. Portal settings, like company hours, are set globally. Whatever you set here in the portal settings will be operative for all of the SalesIQ widgets that you're using in your Zoho installation as part of your SalesIQ. So you can generate many different widgets if you want, but they will all be governed by the same set of rules in the portal settings and in the business hours. One more tab over, we can see that we're able to block IP addresses and ranges. I have to point out that adding an IP address to your block list only blocks access to the chat widget. For a variety of reasons, we've disabled the one IP address. The truth is that blocking IP addresses is a matter of uncertain effectiveness. It may be something that is very useful to you, or you may discover that the people who are whom you really want to block are able to bypass the blocks easily enough. I strongly suggest that you use a website hosting firm that gives you access to a powerful firewall. This block list should be regarded as a kind of backup system, or it's a system that you can employ if you don't want to block specific people from your website, but you want to keep them out of your chat. Another tab to the right, we have websites. Another tab to the right is websites here. This is where we're going to spend a lot of our remaining time, starting in just a few minutes. Websites behave sort of like departments. One more tab over, we have automation. Certain activities here by certain visitors can be used to trigger certain events. There is some super powerful capability here. There are intelligent triggers that can be triggered when certain events happen on our website. We can route visitors to specific areas. So if there's if all the visitors, say, who come from the United Kingdom might go to an operator that's based in London, and all the visitors from Australia can be routed to somewhere else, and so on and so forth. That's an obvious kind of routing system. You can route chats. So you can establish rules so that depending on who's available, you can prioritize the people who take chats. You can monitor chats in real time, and you can schedule emails to go out. We don't have a great deal of stuff configured here at Marx Group Live. We're a relatively small operation, and it's likely that we'll only have one or two people at a time monitoring the chat functions. On the other hand, if we go for a larger number of people, if we have an organization with a large number of people in the handling the help system, or sorry, not handling the help system, but handling online chats, you may discover that it's a useful function. Let me see if I can bring something up here. Let me go here. Let me enable this window. Let me bring this window to the front. There we go. So this is on our demo system on our training site. If I click on my name up here, I can ask for help. This actually does not go to me. This does not go to the Marx Group Live. This actually goes to Zoho itself, which uses its own help system. And I have an option there to chat. Zoho's help and chat system is based, perhaps appropriately, on Zoho. Let me bring that down. Let me tap that down, bring that to the background. All right. One more tab over. There we go. We have templates. All right. This is for your often used responses, often used blocks of text. Earlier on, we saw those in the when we were engaging in a chat with our visitor. We can add more of these, and we can compose our message. I can, for example, add, thanks for being in touch with us for your CRM questions. Then I click on add, and I've done. Actually, there's one other question. There's one other thing that I want to show you there, which is really nifty. I can type, say, hey, and what if I want to insert somebody's name there? Well, I type the percentage mark, and now Zoho will dynamically insert the visitor name into this canned response, into this prefabricated message. So, right there. Very powerful function. There we go. So, hey, visitor name, thanks for being in touch with us for your CRM questions. I'm actually going to delete this because I just created it. Oddly enough, Zoho does not give me a confirmation on delete. So before you hit the delete button, make sure it's really what you want to do. One tab over, we have lead scoring. There's some amazing power here. This is actually a topic that I think we cover this in another class. We'll touch on it briefly here. For a starter, let's ignore those two rules for the time being. They don't actually make sense from a logical standpoint. I'm going to add two rules here. Let's say that we have, we want to make sure that in our chat system, we are prioritizing people who meet certain criteria. Let's say that I've written a great application, or let's say that I've done a major push into trying to appeal to Linux users in Maine. So my lead scoring rule, so when somebody comes in and it turns out that their web browser shows up as being, that their operating system shows Linux, and if they're coming to us from Maine, I want to prioritize them. I want to add points to their lead score. So if let's go for if these are in alphabetical order. Here's operating system. If the operating system reports as Linux, and if the state, there's our state, is equal to main, then I'm going to say add 25 points to their lead score. I'm going to create one more rule here to show you an interesting user interface aspect to this. Based on sad experience over years of running websites and dealing with unwanted visitors, I have to tell you that users from the Russian Federation are generally not likely to be great leads. So I'm going to say if somebody comes in and the country is, let's see, why did I think I saw that up there? No, I didn't. Okay. So if the country that somebody is coming from is, there we go, the Russian Federation, I want to subtract 10 points from the lead score. All right. So when Zoho, when I look at the analytics, and I'm going to be able to look at the real-time analytics, when Zoho tells me how important the different visitors on my site are, it can propose, or it can suggest possible weights scoring to say, well, if somebody's coming in from the Russian Federation, probably somebody who's poking around for weaknesses in my website. Whereas if it's somebody who's in Linux and somebody who's using Linux in the state of Maine, that's somebody I really want to pay attention to. So it'll add 25 points. Sort of a blue-green color for adding and a orangey-red color for subtracting points from a lead score. I'm going to cancel both of those rules for now. I get a request to confirm that I want to delete that score, and I'm just going to do that for now. Recalculation, this can happen. I can set that for a weekly basis. Essentially, what happens there is that when a visitor is inactive for a certain period of time, the lead score for that visitor actually drops by 25% over the interval that I choose here. So for example, a score of 100, let's say a visitor has 100 points, that goes down to 75 if the visitor doesn't visit the website on the 8th day, on the 8th day if it's weekly, and on the 31st day if it's monthly, and so on. Of course, it's worth pointing out that these analytics are contingent upon the browser delivering accurate information to Zoho. Whatever your web browser reports, that's what the rule will be picking up on. Apple's newer technologies are leaning away from revealing very much about you. Applications like Disconnect may also help thwart this sort of tracking. So these scoring rules are better regarded as broadly indicative rather than authoritative. All of these factors about the web browser, about the location, about the about what fonts are installed in your system, all these factors are put together by some tracking systems to establish a browser fingerprint, which is pretty good at identifying individuals. But browser makers are getting wise to that and thwarting those systems, as well as, of course, Zoho's own scoring system. Another thing that can defeat this kind of analysis is clearing your browser cache, or perhaps surfing to the website from multiple different devices on multiple browsers on one device if they're not sharing cookies. So the lead scoring is helpful, but not absolutely 100% reliable in terms of telling you what you really think you know about your visitors. We're on to our last tab in this initial overview, the integrations. Off to the far right here, there's the integrations. We have we are automatically integrated with the Zoho CRM, Zoho Desk, and Zoho Campaigns. But there are other integrations as well. You can see that I can integrate the Zoho SalesIQ application with a lot of other systems, including, of course, Salesforce, let's see, iContact, MailChimp, Google Constant Contact, Google Analytics, Optimizely, HubSpot, Google. Let's see. Okay. So I can integrate Zoho SalesIQ with these other systems. This is a situation where people are either choosing best of breed software or using a collection of systems that just works best for them. So that's our first quick tour of the Zoho SalesIQ setup area. Let's do a deeper dive into the Websites tab. Let's go here to Websites. I'm going to show you this not from our training account, but rather from this, which is our real live Zoho One SalesIQ system. This is currently running on our site. This way you'll be able to see what happens when we make changes to the active widget. All right. I'm going to click on the Marx Group Live website to control that particular widget. And to give you a sense, that's this widget right here off to the right of this screen that you see on the right. So that's the widget that we're controlling here. So let's take a look at it. There are exactly 4 types of functionality that are enabled, that are available here for this widget. And I've enabled 3 of these on the marxgrouplive.com website. I can enable visitor tracking. I can enable the live chat widget, which is what we actually see down here to the right. I can add, well, this is I'll get back to this in a moment. And I can enable live chat for emails, which is a function where we can actually embed a live chat widget within an email. The live chat for mobile apps, this is a software development kit. This is an SDK for developers who want to integrate live chat into their iOS or Android mobile applications. So visitor tracking, here we go. When I click on this, this is where I get the setup instructions. I can simply click to copy that code. And now I can paste it into my website. The instructions are here on the left. I've copied the code. In my website's source code, I paste the code anywhere in front of the body tag or in front of the close body tag. So anywhere within the body of the website is where I would put this tracking code. And then I would save and publish the changes made to the website. There are very few stipulations. Mostly on what kind of system I use. Mostly I just need to be able to see the code on my website pages. And I need to paste this code up into the body. And that will deliver tracking information to anybody who visits that website. There are website tutorials available for these 5 systems, commonly used systems. How are your icons? How well do you know your application icons? Off to the left, we have WordPress. Next up, Magento. Next up, OpenCart, followed by Drupal and Shopify. And if that's not enough for you, if you need more, those are the most common tutorials. There are also tutorials for 32 other common website environments, including Weebly, Core Commerce. There's Magento again. That's one of the, there are a total of 37 here actually. Xcart, Desk, Vision. I think I saw Joomla up there. Joomla, which is similar to Drupal, although people who use both Drupal and Joomla might disagree with me that they're that similar. But they're both web content management systems. All right. So that's the installation. And what's even better is you can also automatically send these instructions to your webmaster. All right. Let's go back. Click the X there. The live chat widget. There's code for the live chat widget, which is different from the tracking information. So you've got tracking and you've got the live chat, the chat window. This just has to get pasted somewhere in the body of your code. There's an option here that allows this code to be used in multiple websites. This could be a problem because this code off here to the right, that code enables a widget on whatever website it happens to be using it. So because HTML is open, because everybody can see HTML, all you have to do is look at the source, view source in your web browser. Because the source code is always available, it could be, and Zoho makes a note right down here, spammers and harassers might use your live chat code on their own websites. So they could hypothetically enable your chat window on their sites simply to make trouble. So actually allow this code to be used in multiple websites. We can disable that if that becomes a problem. All right. One more box across. I'm going to dig deeper into one of these windows later. Let's see. Oh, and on the very end, the signature live chat. Here we go. This makes it possible for you to add a live chat button into an email signature. That way, when you send an email with this button, the recipient will get a clickable link that opens up a chat window. Now, to be fair, this could be a problem in terms of users who are skittish about launching apps from within emails. Bad things sometimes happen this way, and some email programs or computer security systems may flag executable applications or links to external websites that they don't particularly necessarily know that they should trust. Be aware that this is at least somewhat contingent upon how your email recipients have configured their systems. Let's head back to the live chat widget. And let's do a little bit of setup work here. All right, earlier we just looked at installation, but then we get into some fun. Now, off on the left here we have installation, widget, and chat window. There are three parts of the installation here, or there are three things that we need to be looking at here. The widget is this bit off to the right. If we look at our web page, the live chat button, that's the widget. And then the chat window is something different. The chat window is this bigger thing, okay? So the chat window is when it's actually working. The widget is when it's the button. All right, so under the widget, we have three different possibilities. We can have it floating as it does right now. I can turn it into a button that is fixed to a particular location on the website, or I can even personalize it so that visitors can choose the operator whom they'd like to converse with. That would be for our larger clients, where we have specific, more than one operator, and where users may choose to develop perhaps a relationship or a non-relationship with one of the operators. All right. Where are we here? Right. So this is simply how the widget looks on the page. Floating is okay. Just make sure it's not obscuring things on the page below. You don't want to have, for example, you don't want to be at the bottom of your web page and have the live chat obscuring critical information. So you wouldn't want that to be the bottom of your web page because it's obscuring the content behind it, and it can't be put away. All right, so then we get on to appearance. Now, this is what the off here on the right-hand side of the screen, we have the preview, and here on the left, we have the options. So right now, the sticker is the round coin. We can change that. We can make it look like a banner, or one of these, or one of those. So we have a couple of different options here. Actually, we have rather a large number of options here. Or I can upload my own sticker. I can upload my own graphic that sits in that space as long as it's 211, or it isn't bigger than 211 pixels by 204 pixels high. I can choose the location for this widget, so I can set it bottom left corner is often the typical place for it. That's the bottom right, which is usual. Bottom left, I can put it on the bottom corner. I can put it midway through on the left side of the screen. I actually, as a user, I find the side item really intrusive. I personally, as a user, I always prefer to have it down at the in one of the corners, either up or down in one of the corners. All right. Scrolling down, I can choose a color for the widget. I manually enter a hex code for the color using 8-bit hexadecimal there. So I can change the coloring of this. I can manually type in a color code here. But I'm going to bring that back to the blue that we originally had. I can put the company logo into that sticker, into the widget. I can include a picture. This can be helpful. I would suggest it's really helpful if the picture is actually somebody who works from your company and not a stock photography model, because that sort of seems a bit deceptive, and people usually can see right through that. And finally, we have the option. We have the option so that if none of our operators is online, we can hide that widget. And of course, we can also hide the widget in the mobile browser. So if we don't want to take chat messages in the mobile browser, we'll hide that. Next up, Zoho wants to know if I really want to leave, and yes, I do want to leave, rather than setting that and changing our live system. We can set the font there. You don't have to worry about the user having this font available. It gets pulled in as it's a web font. We have 5 different options here. There's the user's default website font, which is an interesting idea. You know that one's going to work even if the user is not online. Web fonts, of course, may give you trouble if you're not online at the time that you're surfing there. I can change it to Open Sans, I can change it to Oxygen or Roboto, or I can take it back to Proxima Nova. So these are minor twiddles. Of course, you can spend a ridiculous amount of time setting the individual bits and pieces, and if that's critical, that's great, but just make sure it's not taking you away from the business of doing your business. This message, live chat, questions on classes or subscriptions. Different widgets may give you only one line, may only give you one line of text, and if that's the case, you're going to have to play with the wording. You're going to have to be very careful about that. All right, and you know what? That was just the button. All of those options were just the button that pops open the chat window. It's just the widget. Let's cancel out of there. Now, let's go see about the chat window. So when we look at our web browser again, that's what happens when we click on that. We can configure how this looks as well. So let me go there. I click on the chat window here. Once again, I have options for the general appearance of the chat window. I have a variety of options here. And once again, we can spend a great deal of time messing with these and making sure that we're happy with the way it looks. The color for the chat window, this is a small design suggestion. Zoho suggests actually matching the tone used on our website. And here for the Marx group, we've actually done that. You can look at these buttons and they pretty much match the coloring in our window. This makes it a more seamless experience. It makes it look as if the chat button is less intrusive than it might otherwise be. I can set the default size to being small or large. Note that mobile browsers don't get a choice. It's automatically set for them. You may have noted earlier on that in our chat window, when we first launched it, there it is. There's the Marx Group logo up there because we've enabled it here. We can display the operator profile picture when there's a connection. Once again, if you're going to do this, I really strongly suggest you make it the real person who's the operator rather than, again, stock photography models. We can alter the window using CSS. If you'd like to pay your web developers a great deal of money, or if you'd like to spend a lot of time messing with it, that's certainly a plausible thing to do. That's just the appearance. We still have 3 more subfields there. Zoho once again asks if I want to save my changes. Configurations. These are powerful. I can set the wait time so that after 45 seconds, Zoho will automatically send a message saying, sorry that we can't get to you right now. So we can set that. Zoho advises that the shorter the wait time, the higher the satisfaction and the greater the number of business conversions. We can leave the language of the chat window, or we can manually specify that. Here's the department. Earlier on in our configuration of the widgets or the SalesIQ, we defined departments. This is where we use them. This is where we allow the visitor to print the chat transcript. We can enable an audio call. So that's if the visitor wants to switch over from a written call to an audio call. This is something that you may or may not want to enable. Once again, it involves more configuration on the client side. If there are firewalls in place, this can get complicated. But on the other hand, if you don't enable audio calls, that could be an issue in terms of Section 508 compliance. Allow visitors to email the chat transcripts to themselves. Allow visitors to share files. So these are options that we are selecting for this specific widget. I've enabled viewing previous chat conversations here, which is why here you can see chats that I've already had, essentially with myself. I can make emojis available in the chat window, and I can allow visitors to access articles from within the chat window, rather than visiting the resource page and browsing through that. Next up, input fields. Now, unfortunately, we don't have as much flexibility here as we might have wished, as we might have hoped to have. Here we have pre-chat and post-chat input fields. So the chat input fields, we can mark the name field as mandatory and the email address as mandatory. That's probably a good idea. Here we have the name field enabled, the address field enabled. Of course, if you disable the address field, or if you make the address field optional, you may get more chats, but on the other hand, you may get more chaff with the wheat. We can enable a phone number, and of course, I can check that to make it mandatory. Now, when a visitor comes and wants to chat with us, we're going to grab all this information from the visitor, and that has to be there before the chat can be initiated by the visitor. And finally, I can have a check so that the user is automatically invited to subscribe to our mailing list. Okay, and finally, response messages. Actually, I have a good description of these response messages. There we go. So let me go here. All right. So this is not exactly beautifully laid out by Zoho. So I'm going to give you a quick overview here. Zoho has two sets of message groups. There we go, online responses and offline response. So the way that this looks, for online responses, these are automatically generated messages. So we can set automated messages. So when certain things happen, these are sent to the visitor. So there's a greeting message. So you can set a customized message to welcome the visitor. So thank you for connecting with us. Please stand by while I review your questions and comments. I edit this by hovering. Let's see, here's the greeting message, and there is the edit field. And that shows you off on the right what it looks like. So for the thank you message, I click on edit, and I see what that message is. I can edit the waiting message. So immediately after they've placed a chat request and they seek an operator's assistance, this is the message that comes up. The busy message is right here, and so on. So all these messages can be configured. This is something that you should probably experiment with. Let's see what's next. As I type in these fields, incidentally, you may notice that there I have a limited number of characters. We hope that you will be happy with our service. And in the down below, you can see that I've exceeded. Oops, no, you can't. Sorry. Let me put away the PowerPoint for a moment there. All right. So let's see, where was I? There we go. So here's a message. Here's our busy response message. In the meantime, we trust that you will be our guest. And Zoho warns me as I type that I've exceeded the maximum of 100 characters. So I'm actually just going to cancel to make sure I don't change any of our live text. As you work on the wording here, you may regard it as being sort of halfway between tweeting and haiku. Economy of speech is important, but so is accuracy and tone. As you set this up, I really strongly suggest that you consider the user experience behind this, particularly for the automated texts or the automatic text blocks that you have. In some ways, the technology is the easier part of it. In some ways, it's actually harder to capture exactly the right tone for your organization. You want to catch something that, or you want to write something that catches the tone, the organizational culture that you want to portray. Are you trying to be friendly? Are you trying to be formal? Are you using contractions or aren't you? All of these things message tone to your visitors, and they're important to look at. Think about why your visitor is contacting you. What is it that they're likely to want out of the conversation? Is it authority or is it sympathy? When people access their widget or this widget, is this their first contact with you? Or do they already know who you are and what your organization is like? So if you have a UX designer around, by all means get him or her to walk through this system and experience the message and make sure it's in harmony with the organization that you're trying to represent, and definitely avoid mistakes in spelling and grammar. And let's see. So let's go on to a few more of these fields. If you're an operator and you need to step away from your computer, you can announce that you're unavailable. Let me show you how to do this. Let me go to a different browser for a moment. Here we go. There we go. Here in, let's see, where am I now? There I am. Here at the top, if I'm an operator and this is my SalesIQ screen, I can toggle that on or off, or busy or available. All right. Right now, I'm going to spend just a few more minutes. We're already well into our time. I'm going to spend a few more moments going over some of the analytics side of SalesIQ. So I'm going to go to visitors online. Unfortunately, there's nobody online right here. So I'm going to switch to our live system. Let me hide that. There we go. Here I am in my live system. And I'm actually going to get out of the setup area completely. And I don't want to save my changes. So right now I have no visitors online. I can look at this view both as the rings view, where the farther people are inward, the more time they spent on our site, or I can view it as sort of a Kanban kind of model, where I can see different visitors here. Unfortunately, we don't have anybody online. And actually, to clarify, I am online on the Marx Group Live, but we've configured our Marx Group Live analytics so that it automatically excludes people who are within the organization, so we're not distorting our own analytics. I can look at chats. Here's a recent chat that I had. This is some information that I had. let's see, we've already looked at some of the information that Zoho can tell me based on this. So there's my country, web browser, and operating system. I'm going to visitor history. These are visitors that have come to our site in the last while. I can configure this, of course, to select all visitors. I can have returning visitors, and I can export, I can schedule, I can send this analytics to another platform. I'm going to skip over the chat history because this is a live installation, and that could get us into privacy issues. We just don't want to we don't want to reveal privileged information. Feedback is good. Reports are good. So when we go through the SalesIQ, the visitor tracking, oh, there's somebody. Let's see if somebody's on. Let's see if I can see somebody here. Okay, so there's somebody who's just popped onto our site. And let's click on that and see what's happened. So this person's been on our site for 1 minute already, so they've gone from the outer ring to the inner ring. Now, this does potentially get slightly creepy. Oh, the visitor has already left our website. That's all right. In some ways, that's just as well. So the visitor has left. The visitor was on our site for 1 minute and 13 seconds. It was a new visitor coming from Fountain Hills, Arizona. That's the IP address that they came in from, and that's what they were looking at. They were looking at their the marxgroupLive.com. Now, if the visitor were still on, let's see. Oh, the visitor was using, came from the United States, was using Safari on an Apple Macintosh. Eventually, these things start to become indicative. If you see nobody in your analytics who's using Linux, that's a factor. If you see lots of people using Linux, that's also a factor. It can become important in terms of how you do your business and what sorts of features you offer, particularly if you're serving a technical community with a technical problem, with a technical product. If the visitor were still on our website, one of the things that we can do is we can actually initiate a text chat with the visitor. So even if usually we think of our text widget or a chat widget as something that the visitor initiates, it's actually possible for us to initiate it, where we say, hi, it looks like you've been on our website for some time. Can I help you with any questions? That may be something that you want to do in your organization, or it may be something that you think is just entirely too creepy. It's one thing for a salesperson to sneak up on you in the store. It's quite another thing for us to do it invisibly online. But if that's the way your business runs, that's entirely, Zoho makes it possible to do this. Feedback, let me go. We're going to ignore feedback for now. Feedback just gives us an indication of how everybody has been doing. But once again, in our live installation, there is information there that is privileged. So that is the Zoho SalesIQ tool. That's what the Zoho SalesIQ tool looks like. Let's go here. Oopsie. There we go. Too many screens. Right. So that's the Zoho SalesIQ tool. The real-time analytics are great. If we had more people on our website right now, you'd actually be able to see how much information we can gather in real time about our visitors, and how useful this can be if you're trying to serve people and if you're trying to make sure that their questions, if they have them, are being answered. The analytics, the real-time analytics are great. And there's a relatively easy to use chat widget with a ton of options that they can alter to suit the visual style of your business as well as the tone of your business. The widget involves and the analytics involve one-time installations only on your website, after which you can leave your website alone, or you can leave your webmaster alone. And when we combine all of these things together, it provides us a really powerful way to handle visitors on our website, a really powerful way to interact with them and to be responsive to them. So here's what we looked at today. Let me switch to PowerPoint. There we go. So today, we looked at what SalesIQ offers to you. We looked at an overview of the SalesIQ backend. We looked at the configuration of the SalesIQ widgets, and we've looked at who's online with us and what sorts of analytics Zoho can offer to us. At this time, I'm wondering if you have any questions about what we've covered today. We covered a lot of material in today's class. Please do use the on-screen chat if there are any questions that I can answer. Please wait for a minute. I'll be back in a minute or two to make sure that everybody has had a chance to get in with some questions, and then I'll be back. Nope, that's not it. All right, before we get into the Q&A section today, I do want to thank everybody for joining us. If you would like to leave early, please make sure to check out the calendar section of the Marx Group Live website to see upcoming trainings and to see what we'll be going over. If you have any suggestions for other classes or how to adjust this class topic to make it more effective and more useful for you, please do email us at support@marxgrouplive.com. If you can't stick around now for the Q&A session, you can also email us questions at support@marxgrouplive.com, and we'll answer that way. So, on to the Q&A section of the class. If you don't mind, give me a couple of minutes to review all the chat questions that were posted, because I want to make sure that I don't miss any. Also, feel free to use this next couple of minutes to add new questions.